As we begin Unit 7 in U.S. history, we're going to be looking at the United States on the international stage, things that were going on outside of our borders. The first event that we're going to be looking at is the Spanish-American War. Now, this is a war that's kind of a unique war in the fact that no battles were fought in Spain or the United States. All the battles were fought in territories of the Spanish. The focus of this was Cuba. This is a cause and effect chart about the Spanish-American War. Again, the reasons we got involved in this was because we were upset about the Spanish controlling Cuba, which is only 90 miles off the southern coast of Florida. And also there were reports coming out of Cuba about how the Spanish were badly mistreating Cubans, especially those that were part of this rebellion against Spain. There also was an instance where one of our ships, the USS Maine, that was down in the Havana Harbor in Cuba, it blew up. And a lot of the newspapers in America kind of implicated the Spanish as being the ones who caused this. Now, turns out that wasn't true, but it was enough anger to incite Americans to push for a call to war, and we go to war with Spain. As far as wars are concerned, this was a pretty easy war for the United States. We helped Cuba gain their independence, but we also ourselves gained some territories, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. So just real quickly, create your own chart about the causes and effects of the Spanish-American War. Now, the big controversy, there are a lot of controversies about the Spanish-American War, but the biggest one had to do with the Philippines. Now, the Philippines, it's a large island nation made up of dozens and dozens of islands, and it's literally on the other side of the globe from the United States. It's on the other side of the planet. Some Americans thought that we needed to extend the ideas of manifest destiny by getting involved in other parts of the world to create new markets for American goods, to create military bases and trading outposts and refueling stations for our trade ships and military ships. Other people thought that maybe we shouldn't do this. So the Philippines became kind of the nation that we took over that became the biggest focus of this debate. One of the things that happened with the Philippine situation is we helped the Filipinos fight against the Spanish and remove the Spanish from the Philippines. But then there were concerns from U.S. leaders that if we left the Philippines, another country would just come and take them over. This was the age of imperialism that you learned about that was happening in the late 1800s. You learned about this in world history. A lot of European countries were taking over large parts of Southeast Asia and Africa. So we were concerned if we left, somebody else would just come take them over. The irony of that is, by us staying, we became an imperialist power. And the very same Filipino troops that we were helping support against the Spanish then turned against us, and the Philippine-American War broke out. So many Americans, some very famous Americans like Andrew Carnegie and Mark Twain, became part of what was called the anti-imperialist movement. Again, imperialism is this concept of a country going in and taking over other territories, in effect creating an empire. The United States was starting to do this, although not on the same scale as places like Great Britain and other European countries were doing at that time. We were taking over places, and some people thought this was the wrong thing for us to do. This cartoon at the right kind of shows the United States starting as an infant and then growing through the Louisiana Purchase and other territorial expansions until we get to 1899, and Uncle Sam is this big bloated guy. Other Americans thought that we needed to take over other places to create, again, trading outposts and refueling stations and markets for our goods. This is a quote from the Anti-Imperialist League, and then to the right here is a cartoon about American imperialism. We're going to come back and look at that in just a moment. But answer this question: what is imperialism? Why was American imperialism in the Philippines so controversial? And what do you believe the writer of this excerpt we looked at just a second ago and the cartoon, what are they saying about imperialism? So if we go back to this quote real quickly, you notice they mention this idea of the spirit of 1776, that we are extinguishing the spirit of 1776. Well, that was the year we declared independence from Great Britain. We declared independence from an imperialist power, yet here we are in the Philippines becoming an imperialist power. So in this quote, what they're basically saying is that we are becoming the very same thing that we had fought against in the American Revolution. The Filipinos now look at us just like we looked at Great Britain. On the right with this political cartoon, you have this concept of Uncle Sam at a restaurant ordering from the menu. The guy on the right, haven't mentioned him, but he was the president during the Spanish-American War, McKinley. In this cartoon, he's a waiter taking the order from Uncle Sam. The idea behind this cartoon is that some people thought the United States was taking over places just like somebody ordering from a menu at a restaurant. Oh, I'll take that and that and that without any real thought behind it or really any concern. Now, obviously, in real life, we weren't ordering from a menu. We were taking over places that were independent sovereign nations. And some people thought that we weren't taking those things into account, that we were just going and picking and choosing whatever we wanted to without really thinking about the consequences or implications of what we were doing. Another thing that happened during this time was a concern about Europeans coming over and using economic influence and other issues to kind of regain control of parts of Latin America. Now, this was the very same issue that was going on, or not the same issue, but similar to what was going on when the original Monroe Doctrine was issued. So President Roosevelt, who became president after the Spanish-American War, thought that the United States needed to make a new statement, kind of adding to the Monroe Doctrine. And basically, what Theodore Roosevelt said was that we had the right, as the major world power in the Western Hemisphere, to intervene in Latin American countries that were going through a crisis. Now, this could be a crisis that was caused by debt that they owed to a European country. It could be an organic grassroots crisis that happened within a country. The point of the Roosevelt Corollary to the Monroe Doctrine was the United States was saying that we now had the right to intervene in the affairs of Latin America, not just to keep countries out of Latin America, but to actively get engaged in Latin America where we felt it was necessary to do so. So this was a big step forward for the United States when it came to being involved. Theodore Roosevelt actually used the term police powers, basically saying the United States was kind of now like we were the policemen of the Western Hemisphere. And it was our job to oversee everything that was happening in this part of the world. Why did President Roosevelt issue the Roosevelt Corollary? What was going on that made him feel like he needed to do this? And how did his corollary increase the role of the United States in Latin America? Finally, we're going to look at something that many nations had wanted for a while, a canal through Central America. This map on the right shows you how much time and distance and money, doesn't show the money on here, but how much would be saved by a canal. You can see the enormous distance from, if you wanted to go from the East Coast to the West Coast of the United States, you had to go all the way down the southern tip of South America and up. A canal through Central America would save thousands and thousands of miles, days and days of time, and thousands of dollars for each ship because they would not have to go all the way around the South American continent. It wasn't so easy to do, though, because we didn't control that land. We wanted to build a canal through Panama, but at the time, Panama was actually controlled by Colombia. Colombia refused to let us do this. So the United States got involved in a Panamanian revolution against Colombia. We helped support them. Panama was able to break away from Colombia, and then they allowed us to build the canal through Panama. The two main reasons that we got involved in doing this was the United States felt that we needed to shorten the time between the East and West Coast. That would help with trade, but in particular, number two, would help with our national defense. We were a two-ocean world power, and we needed the ability to move our naval ships quickly from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean as needed. So how did the United States gain the land that it needed to build the Panama Canal? And why did President Roosevelt feel that we needed the Panama Canal?